June 27th. That day most likely means nothing to you. But to me, it has meant a lot, as it's usually one of my favorite days of the year. Anyone who's been on this channel longer than 2 seconds knows that my favorite race car driver across all forms of motorsports is Johnny Benson. Well, June 27th just happens to be Johnny Benson's birthday. That is the main reason I have this tradition of sorts that a major video always debuts on June 27th. A lot of my big-time videos have debuted on June 27th, and now you know why. That being said, for 2024, the story of Johnny's Super Modified crash from 2009 was my big video for the year. And there was no chance that was going up on Johnny's birthday. June 13th was the day that happened in 2009, so that was the day the video about it debuted in 2024. That would leave exactly 2 weeks between that video's debut and Johnny's birthday. So I didn't really have anything planned. I told a few of my friends about that, and most encouraged that I keep tradition and do another video anyways, even if it's a lighter or shorter video. Given that the Super Modified video was an anniversary video with that marking 15 years since that crash happened, there was only one thing I could do a video on regarding something that happened directly on June 27th. 2004 was the first year my old group of racing friends and I had the idea to do this end-of-school/beginning of summer party sleepover spectacular event. All 6 of us together. After some discussion, we decided that this would take place at my folks' house. When picking a date to do this, I suggested June 27th, not just because of Johnny's birthday, but because 3 major events were happening that day. The 2004 Dodge Save Mart 350 NASCAR Cup Series race, the 2004 Great American Bash WWE pay-per-view event, and the 2004 NHRA Sears Craftsman Nationals. Eventually, that was the day we settled on. Little did we know, that would become one of the absolute worst days I have ever experienced. Literally everything went wrong, and the more that happened, the worse it got. And eventually, one of those events became catastrophic. This is the story of June 27th, 2004. The darkest day. Before fully getting into the first of those events that day, there has to be a note of what happened before it, as my mom and I went to visit Grandma in the hospital. The day previously, June 26th, Grandma had issues while we were all shopping at the Food Lion, which, for those unaware, is a grocery store most associated with the southeastern portion of the United States. An ambulance was called and took Grandma to the hospital. Our shopping was delayed as we had followed Grandma in the ambulance. It turned out to be a minor heart issue, but this would require Grandma to spend the night at the hospital. The following day, before everyone else had arrived to my place, and before the cup race, Mom and I went to see Grandma, and though she'd be there for a couple more days for observation purposes due to her age, she was expected to be fine and released within the week. When Mom and I got back to the house, 3 of the 5 of my friends were there. The other 2 soon arrived after, and shortly after that, the first of our 3 events commenced. The 2004 Dodge Save Mart 350 for the NASCAR Cup Series. Since I'm basically covering 3 events in this one video, I won't be covering this race like I do other races. Since this event is pretty much not relevant whatsoever in the long run, I'll go as quickly as possible. In the 2004 Dodge Save Mart 350, in chronological order, Jeff Gordon hits Rusty Wallace as soon as the green flag waved, like he does. Austin Cameron hits the wall, Kurt Busch took the lead, Jeff Gordon took the lead back on lap 2 and pretty much dominated, Tony Stewart and Ward Burton spun on lap 3, causing a caution, the restart was on lap 6, Dale Earnhardt Jr. spun on lap 9, no caution, Ricky Rudd spun by himself on lap 14, and as he got going, Klaus Graf slightly doinked him, no caution. The left front of Robbie Gordon's car comes off at lap 16, causing a caution. The restart was on lap 19. Dale Earnhardt Jr. spun Scott Riggs after Riggs got squirrely off the corner on lap 21, and surprisingly, there was no caution. Tony Stewart soon after spins Brendan Gaughan, to which Scott Riggs had to slow up to not hit Gaughan. Guess what? The Atwood fan of our group also likes both Riggs and Gaughan, so she's not too happy. Brandon Nash spins on lap 32, and Kyle Petty barely avoids him. Brendan gets it going, and thus there's no caution. During green flag pit stops, Kevin Harvick had to make a second pit stop due to a loose lug nut on the first stop. After that, Ryan Newman spins Austin Cameron, but there was no caution. Ricky Rudd and Scott Riggs both go to the garage as a caution for oil was thrown on lap 46. The oil allegedly came from Riggs' car. The restart was on lap 49. Ryan Newman and Dale Jr. had issues on a restart, resulting in both of them pitting. Bobby Labonte snookered P.J. Jones into Dale Earnhardt Jr., resulting in Jr. spinning with no caution. Robbie Gordon has a right front tire issue, resulting in no caution. Matt Kenseth overcooked it and spun himself and Sterling Marlin with no caution. Bobby Labonte has some sort of brake issue, which takes him out of contention. Casey Mears spun Jeff Burton, and again there was no caution. Austin Cameron spun on lap 66, causing a caution. The restart was on lap 70. Scott Riggs crashed out on lap 71, causing a caution. I may or may not have laughed at the Atwood fan of the group, who is not having a good day with quite a few of her guys in this race. I then get egg in my face, as come to find out Casey Kane spun right before that caution. But that does not satisfy the Atwood fan, as guess what? She likes Kane too. Anyway, the restart was on lap 74. Debris cuts down Robbie Gordon's right front tire, which causes another caution to fall on lap 81. The final restart was on lap 83. Brian Vickers spun out. The Atwood fan likes him too, and she just wants this race to end. Many laps later, this infamous Jeremy Mayfield incident happened, which brightened the mood of the Atwood fan rather slightly. Until Mayfield nearly hits the last remaining driver of the Atwood fan who hasn't been in an incident that entire race, Ricky Craven, head on! And Mayfield also did this with Ken Schrader. The last 27 laps went green without a caution somehow. Jeff Gordon led them all and won the race. And the race was pretty much meh to all of us. I technically have the overall bragging rights with two of my road course guys, Scott Pruitt and Boris Said, being the top finishers amongst all of our combined guys. The Harvick fan of the group had the bragging rights amongst the main crop of drivers, with Harvick being the top finisher among them. The only other driver in the main group in this race to not have a spin or crash was Ricky Craven, albeit barely. How the hell Jimmy McMurray and Michael Waltrip finished second and fourth, I'll never know. Jeff Gordon led 92 of the 110 laps. Everyone was meh with this race, and especially since Jeff Gordon was either a neutral or a baddie amongst everyone in the group. This race was even worse than I had remembered. That being said, there is a reason we don't remember much about this race. And that is because of the other two events that night. That's right, this night will only get worse. With Infineon now complete, we now reach a conundrum. The 2004 Sears Craftsman Nationals and 2004 Great American Bash came on at the exact same time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. What do we focus on? For most of the group, it doesn't matter because only one of us, me, was really into drag racing, and only two of us, me and the Atwood fan of the group, were into wrestling. Because my favorite wrestler, The Undertaker, was involved in a major storyline, and the favorite wrestler of the Atwood fan, John Cena, was in a title match, we decided to focus more on the Great American Bash, which we would watch in the living room with my mom. Meanwhile, my dad would be in the bedroom watching drag racing. And a couple of us would check in with the drag racing stuff between matches. So, other than the big matches, the reason the Great American Bash was a huge deal was because it took place at the Norfolk Scope in Norfolk, Virginia. For those unaware, we're all from the state of Virginia. Albeit nowhere close to Norfolk, but still close to home in the aspect it was in the same state as us. So, fair warning, WWE is a bit finicky with their footage being used, so I won't do that. I'll just use screenshots for this event, which is fine. Be sure to watch this video for a more in-depth review of the 2004 Great American Bash, which includes footage of the event. Anyway, here is how this and the drag racing event that was on at the same time went for us. The first match of the night was a 4-way elimination match between Rene Dupree, Booker T, RVD, and John Cena for the United States title. The outward fan of the group sees her wrestler in the opening match. RVD was the first person eliminated by Cena, then Booker T eliminates Dupree. In the final showdown, Cena defeats Booker T and retains the US title, and the outward fan of the group is happy that her wrestler made up for all the crap all of her drivers had to deal with at Infineon. Meanwhile, nothing of note regarding the drag racing event happened, and this first round was underway with all 4 major divisions in play. Although there was a close call in the first round of Funny Car.
He may have crossed the center line. We'll have to wait for the official ruling, but Gilbertson got to the wing light anyway. 544 and 235 miles an hour, and this was extremely close to being a major collision.
Boy, it definitely was. I mean, Gary Ditch had this race won. You see Gilbertson pedal early in the run. Right after that, Gary smoked the tires. The car made a move to the wall, and then it looks like he maybe just overcorrected a little bit, and the thing shot back cross towards the center. Watch this thing. Makes a little move towards the wall. Right there, just smokes the tires. He gets back on it, boy, and it just shoots it right over there. He didn't cross the center line, but at that point it didn't matter anyway because Bobby Gilbertson got to the finish line first.
So Gilbertson picks up his 4th round win of 2004 and takes out last week's winner. Stay with us. We're coming right back for more Funny Car.
Afterwards were all the meh, or okay, but our guys weren't involved in these matches before the 2 other big matches of the night, so we'll quickly go through those. Luther Reigns basically squashes Charlie Haas. No, they're not related to Roman Reigns or Gene Haas, by the way. Rey Mysterio and Chavo Guerrero had a pretty good match. Mysterio won, and for the 3rd match of the night, things were looking up. Until they weren't. The next match was Kenzo Suzuki versus Billy Gunn. Why? Suzuki won. The match sucked. Sable took on Tori Wilson. Sable won, but really didn't. Uggsville. Next up was Mordecai, a.k.a. Dollar Tree Undertaker, versus Hardcore Holly. A couple interesting moves, but Mordecai won, and the match was meh. So that's it before the 2 big deal wrestling matches of the night. However, I don't remember which prior match this occurred after, but after each match, 1 or 2 of us would go to the bedroom to see if anything notable had happened during the Sears Craftsman Nationals. And during one of those times, something did happen. I was called to the bedroom and was notified that something had happened during the 2nd round of Top Fuel. And it involved one of my guys.
Remember, this is a rematch from round 2 back in Columbus. And it was Darrell Russell winning that race and going on to win the event.
Darrell Russell has a very good race car right now. Like you said, like Dave said, the car's been going down the racetrack and running big numbers pretty much every time.
Well, guess what? It is. Oh, huge crash. The cars come apart. Darrell Russell's car has literally broken into 3 pieces. The safety safari already on the way. Scott Coletta was able to avoid the disintegrating top fueler of Darrell Russell, and right now we're going to hold our breath and hope for the best. The safety safari crew, they're back at the starting line. Jim Oberhofer consoling Wayne Dupuis. And there comes Scott Coletta running back after getting his car stopped. Everybody forgets about the win lights at moments like this, folks, I guarantee you. All right, let's go back and take another look, see if we can see what happened.
Basically, Darrell Russell was on a decent run. He didn't get the win light, but right at the finish line, something blew the left rear tire out, which immediately took the wing out. The chassis actually broke in 2 places. It looks like right behind the motor plate and right behind the driver compartment, spun around backwards, and you see the fire there. Just a tremendous crash at that point. Watch it again as we go down there. Just as soon as that tire goes out, takes that wing out, I mean, Darrell Russell can do nothing at that point except wait for that thing to come to a stop.
And there did appear to be contact with Scott Coletta's car, but he was able to get his car safely stopped. We'll come back, get a medical update here at St. Louis.
In the final race of second round of Top Fuel, Darrell Russell, one of my guys, and the #1 qualifier, took on Scott Coletta. Scott actually managed to win the round. However, one of the rear tires on Darrell's car blew out, causing it to crash. I did see a replay of what had happened. It reminded me of a crash that Gary Scelzi, another one of my guys, had in 2000 that looked exactly the same. Gary was okay after that crash, so I had assumed that Darrell was okay as well after his. So we just resumed watching the rest of the wrestling event. More on this later. The second to last match was Eddie Guerrero versus Bradshaw for the WWE title. It was a Texas bull rope match. Basically, the two are attached to each other by a rope, and to win, you have to incapacitate your opponent so you can touch all 4 turnbuckles with your hand with no obstruction from the opponent. So, basically, the match was okay, and Eddie Guerrero won the match. Then the BS starts again. Kurt Angle, who was playing GM, made up this ruling saying Bradshaw was the winner of the match and the new champion because he hit the turnbuckle before Eddie did, to which... No, Bradshaw hit the turnbuckle with his back, not his hand! This is basically Kurt getting revenge on Eddie and furthering their rivalry and storyline. It was dumb. No one was happy.
Now, if that wasn't bad enough...
It gets worse. The main event of the night ended up being this Live Free or Die match. I wish I was making that up. And this match involved my favorite wrestler, The Undertaker, who was taking on the Dudley Boys, basically in a handicap match. So, bear with me on this one because this is complicated and stupid. Paul Heyman and the Dudley Boys kidnap Paul Bearer, The Undertaker's manager, and basically Heyman's ultimatum is if The Undertaker wants Paul Bearer freed, he would have to do the right thing at the Great American Bash in what was dubbed the Live Free or Die match. So in this match, Paul Bearer is in a concrete crypt next to a cement truck. And apparently in this match, the right thing for The Undertaker to do is lie down. Basically, Heyman wanted the Dudleys to beat Undertaker without having to do anything. Yeah, that wasn't happening. And don't get me started with Heyman yelling bad dog, and I wish I was picking that up as well. Anytime Heyman gets upset, he starts yapping and filling the concrete crypt with cement. What? So, eventually, despite Paul Bearer being buried up to his neck in concrete, Undertaker wins. Heyman tries to finish what he threatened to do, Undertaker scares Heyman away, and all will be well, right? Right? No, because the Undertaker then goes to the cement truck and says to Paul Bearer, Paul, I'm sorry, but I have no other choice. And then Undertaker pulls the lever and buries Paul Bearer in concrete, ending the night. What? For those who know me well, both in auto racing and wrestling, this was The Undertaker's 2003 Chicagoland moment. This was the one time my favorite wrestler pissed me off. I was not happy. To this day, with only 2 matches worth a damn ending well, those being in the first 3 matches, and the last 2 matches having trash endings, and this being the first and only time my favorite wrestler pissed me off, the 2004 Great American Bash is still the worst WWE pay-per-view, or PLE, or whatever the hell they call it now, of all time. So for those curious about this, the update on the following Friday's SmackDown was that Paul Bearer was freed but suffered severe internal injuries, and it was unknown if he'd ever come back. Basically, this was their way of writing him off because of health aspects and that kind of thing. Like, seriously, if you were going to write him off, couldn't you find a better fucking way to do it than a fucking concrete crypt thing? Like, seriously, you couldn't do any better than that. But later on in that episode, The Undertaker appears on screen and asks Paul Heyman, if I can do that to him, can you imagine what I'm going to do to you? And that's a further thing with more Heyman people, and yeah. Even better, there is actual footage you can find on the internet of rehearsal scenes regarding this event. My best guess is, if WWE didn't make that footage public, the Virginia State Police would arrest The Undertaker and charge him with either attempted murder or negligence. Having lived in Virginia most of my life, that would not have actually surprised me if that was the case. Oh, but guess what? Even that debacle regarding the one time I got pissed off at my favorite wrestler wasn't the worst part of that entire day either. It got even worse. After the Great American Bash ended, the Sears Craftsman Nationals was still going on. So Dad put that on in the living room as most of us were in my bedroom finishing up bedding arrangements. The winners of the Sears Craftsman Nationals that I ended up being Steve Johnson in Pro Stock Motorcycle, getting his first career win in his 20th year, Greg Anderson in Pro Stock during his unstoppable run, Gary Selzy, one of my guys in Funny Car, and Doug Coletta in Top Fuel, which, meh. As everyone was making bedding arrangements before going to bed, all of a sudden my mom calls me and says Dad called for me from the other side of the house. So I walk into the living room and saw the last 5 seconds of this.
Back here at the Sears Craftsman Nationals, the racing is over, the fans are filing out, and all of us have heavy hearts as we've got 2 weeks off, and it's probably the best 2 weeks that we will need for a lot of healing of wounds. You know, life gives us a smack of reality every now and then. In fact, smack hell, it was a right cross tonight. We choose our endeavors based on our talents. Darrell Russell's talent was found behind the wheel of a Top Fuel dragster. Moments like these remind us how harsh life can be and how precious it truly is. Take time to remember the Russell family tonight, and your own as well. For all of us, we'll see you in 3 weeks in Denver.
And all of a sudden, the anger that I felt towards The Undertaker, I wouldn't say subsided because I was still mad at him, but I'd say took a back seat. Because not only was Grandma in the hospital, not only was the Cup race just utter Ugsville, not only did the WWE title match end in an unnecessary controversy, not only did my favorite wrestler piss me off during a wrestling event in my home state, not only did that WWE pay-per-view end up being the worst of all time, but now I find out that not only did one of my NHRA drivers not only have a crash during that event, but as a result of that crash, he died! I could only fall to my hands and knees saying, "Oh no!" in disbelief at the graphic I just saw. Everyone else found out a few moments later and attempted to console me, but I was inconsolable at this point. The literal drag racing equivalent of Johnny Benson dies on Johnny's birthday. And that's no exaggeration either. I didn't make that connection until later on myself, but it really is true. Darrell Russell's Top Fuel career basically mirrors Johnny Benson's Valvoline era. The full-time seasons were the same, 2001 to 2003. They both, in relation to Valvoline, succeeded legends, Darrell having succeeded Joe Amato, and Johnny having gotten the Valvoline sponsorship from Mark Martin. And those two, believe it or not, were very similar to each other. They're both very popular, very nice, always smiling, always positive and optimistic despite any setback they'd face. You never saw anger from them, ever, if at all. They're both excellent and underrated racers. No one had a bad thing to say about either of them. And if things had worked out, or in this instance had Darrell not gotten killed, they certainly most be champions at the most prestigious level of their respective motorsports. After the broadcast ended, Mom and Dad went to bed as both had to work in the morning. A couple of my friends offered to sleep in the same room as me to comfort me, but I wanted to be alone. I actually cried underneath a pillow before falling asleep. My usual reaction to death is anger, but this is, up to this point in time, one of only 4 deaths in auto racing that resulted in me tearing up out of sadness. This one really hurt. Usually the NHRA doesn't get that much attention outside of the NHRA broadcasts, but it did here. Back when ESPN News was a thing in its original format, basically being a 30-minute news rotation show, the acknowledgement of what happened would play.
Sad news to report from the world of auto racing. One day after earning the second top qualifying award of his career in Top Fuel, setting a track record in the process, Darrell Russell died on that very same Madison, Illinois racetrack. Russell, who entered Sunday fourth in the Top Fuel standings, was facing Scott Kalita in the Sears-Craftsman NHRA Nationals when Russell's car, while running approximately 300 miles an hour, bursts into flames and disintegrates. The emergency personnel on duty responded immediately. Russell was unconscious but breathing as he was helicoptered to St. Louis University Medical Center, where he died at 7:59 p.m. Eastern Time from a closed head injury. The 6-time Top Fuel winner becomes the first NHRA driver killed in competition since Dwayne Johnson in 1996. His pit crew knew the news and outcome were not good. Darrell Russell, one of just 3 NHRA drivers ever to win his first professional start. He was the NHRA Rookie of the Year in 2001. Russell is survived by his wife, Julie. Darrell Russell was just 35 years old.
Do you really want to know how much of a big deal Darrell Russell's death really was? During the summer break for a lot of years, including 2004, I was asked by my mom to record The Young and the Restless for her on a VHS tape every day so she could watch the episode she missed due to work later that night. Well, I had always watched The Price is Right before it, like pretty much everyone else does. In between the two programs was your 12 o'clock local news. And my CBS affiliate during that time, WTVR Channel 6, mentioned that incident involving Darrell during the sports portion of the program. I was amazed that happened. The NHRA has never been discussed in any capacity on the local news as far as I knew. Ever. And yet, it was brought up here. Though I didn't record it as I had not prepared the VCR for recording Mom's Soap Opera yet, I still vividly remember Cheryl Miller, who's been at WTVR Channel 6 forever, discussing Darrell's crash and being amazed that my local CBS affiliate in Virginia was discussing an NHRA event in Missouri. They didn't mention the WWE pay-per-view that was literally in the same state as the station, but they mentioned the driver I had lost. For the NHRA, this caused a chain reaction of things. The creation of the cockpit shield, which today has further evolved into the canopy. There was a lawsuit filed by Darrell's widow, Julie, against Goodyear after not getting answers as to what exactly killed Darrell within a year, and the NHRA was on Julie's side. Morgan Lucas took over Darrell's ride 2 races later as Joe Amato's team elected to skip the next event at Denver. And all I'll say about that is, if Black Flags Matter wants to expand to the NHRA, he can easily do an NHRA bust video on Morgan Lucas. There were a lot of tributes in regards to Darrell, including Gateway dedicating a grandstand to him in 2005, and a lot of other tributes in the Top Fuel division at Gateway the following year. And Darrell is still fondly remembered today, even 20 years after his passing. If anything, the creation and development as what is now the Canopy might be Darrell's biggest legacy, as there has not been a fatality in the Top Fuel division since his crash in 2004. I have no doubt that Darrell would have been a champion in Top Fuel had that Gateway incident not happened. I definitely see him, Tony Schumacher, and Larry Dixon having a massive competitive friendly rivalry for the championship for a decade, if not longer. And who knows how history would have changed, or how long Joe Amato's team would have kept going for, and how many wins and championships they would have gotten with Darrell had Gateway not happened. Joe Amato's team was finding its footing again and had huge momentum going their way. Heck, Darrell's last win ended up being exactly 2 weeks before that crash happened. June 13th, in addition, is Joe Amato's birthday. Now that win ends up being a destiny race. Everything essentially stopped after that. Yeah, Amato's team kept going, but nothing was ever the same. Not even close. It's now been 20 years since that fateful day, and I still look back at that day with anger and sadness. It was the only day The Undertaker ever pissed me off, and yet that wasn't even the worst thing to happen that day. June 27th is usually a day of happiness, as it's the birthday of my favorite driver. But Johnny Benson's 41st birthday was not a happy one for me, and it wasn't for a lot of people, for one reason or another. There have been many dark days for one reason or another since then, but considering that every single thing went wrong in one day, and the longer the day went, the worse it got, and it ended with the death of one of my drag racing favorites, let alone the literal drag racing equivalent of Johnny Benson, June 27th, 2004 will always be known to me as the darkest day.
In 82 professional starts, he never failed to qualify. Had won 6 races, the last one just a couple of weeks ago at Columbus. One of 3 drivers to win his first ever national event. That was back in 2001 at Pomona at the Winter Nationals. And I don't know what else to say, except if you don't believe that this guy was well loved and respected by the fans and his competitors, please believe me, you'd be wrong.
Yeah, you would definitely be wrong. But you know, Marty, as race car drivers, we understand the risk of climbing into a car that makes over 8,000 horsepower and travels a quarter mile and over 330 miles per hour. Darrell Russell knew the risk, but I'll tell you what, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make this any easier. I mean, Darrell Russell was a great guy. I never met anybody that had a bad thing to say about him. He was a very good competitor, always there for anybody, and anybody that knew Darrell Russell is going to miss him.
His last win came on Joe Amato's 60th birthday. At age 35, he leaves behind wife Julie, a lot of family and friends that are going to miss him, and so are we.